Good morning all. Jason Anderson here with our third and final video installment for our course. Very worthwhile and great discussion. Allow me to read my thoughts on this. The United States of America is at a crossroads of political thought and ideology. A modern example of these ancient debates of size and scale is being played out currently in Washington, D.C. and in many of the 50 states throughout the land. As Dr. Don Livingston so eloquently articulated through the series of videos for this course, over the centuries, four major schools of thought have emerged concerning this very issue. The first is Aristotle's. The notion of classical republicanism, small governments were the best to govern the people and to ensure the protection of property, freedom, and liberty. Next, there was the argument by Althusius in which republics could be larger, medium in size, so long as they were federated. These federations of medium-sized republics would best govern the people. Now, David Hume also contributed to this, proposing the next school of thought that small republics could be easily overwhelmed by larger entities. Therefore, larger republics would be the best fit for the people. On the total opposite end of the spectrum from Aristotle is Thomas Hobbes. And Thomas Hobbes argued that the best government is a large government. The larger, the better. Now, with this larger government required another layer of government administration. He referred to it as the artificial man. And this is something that is clearly still in place today at the national level in Washington, at the state level, and even the local county and city governments, where you have a large bureaucracy that continues to run government even when certain elected officials are out of office. They do not depend upon the individual to maintain authority. Currently, this debate can be seen on our national scene. What type of republic is best to secure the property rights, freedoms, and liberties of the people? The scale of the United States in 2021 is immense when compared to the founding era. Which of the previously mentioned political philosophers' ideology would fit best the United States today? Some speak of secession today as a throwback to the American Civil War, while others bring up the idea in a very serious context. Is the scale of the United States too vast to be governed by one centralized government? What happens when one small centralized government becomes too abusive of its power and no longer protects the property, freedom, and liberty of its citizens? This is a very real question. And it takes a serious scholar to contemplate the question and the possible outcome and to bring up the discussion on such a question. The idea of secession is a very legal option throughout the history of our country up to the Civil War. The major challenge to government today in the United States is that politics has become tremendously polarizing and punitive. Historian Donald Livingston noted that we have inherited two Americas, a Jeffersonian America, where there was society prior to government, and a Lincolnian America, where states are simply the administrative agents of the national government. But what happens when the national government is no longer responsive to the people? When the elected officials have lost the sense of consent of the governed? What is the national recourse to such a situation? George Kennan once asked if the nation had become too large to be effectively governed by one central government. Consider this. When the Constitution was adopted in 1788, the ratio of representatives to American citizens was 1 for every 59,000 citizens. After the 2020 census, the 2021 census records indicate that our population is currently 331,449,281 people. There's been no change in the number of seats in Congress since World War II. It remains at 435. In 2021, the ratio of people to representatives is now 1 for every 761,952 people. How in the world is it possible for one elected individual to effectively represent over 500,000 people? In 2007, when Livingston wrote the article, the population of the United States was 690,000. The ratio was 690,000 to 1. And at that point, he mentioned that such a ratio is not remotely within the Republican human scale. Something has to give. It is almost impossible for a government to meet the needs of its citizens with such a ratio. As the founders debated the scale and size of the new nation and how best to form a government that would protect property rights of its citizens, they conceived of a large, physical, large country. However, with a large country has now come a much more openly divisive and diverse ideology that is becoming more contentious to govern with only one central authority. Only the loudest catch the ear of those elected to represent us. Perhaps the time has come to revisit the extended republic argument and reevaluate the current and future scale and size of these United States.